Hello and welcome to Oni Booth 2028 during New York Comic Con. My name is Pat Baer and I'm giving another awesome interview. This time we're talking with Mags Visaggio. Hello.
Hi.
Mags, we're here because, well, you worked on Sleepy Gary #1, which is a Rick and Morty comic here for Oni.
Yes, I did.
Okay, yes. Well, I have questions about that, okay? Let's talk about questions of that. First and foremost, so obviously Rick and Morty is huge licensed property. People know about it. They're excited when they find out there are comics about it. And this is an opportunity, obviously, to talk about a character that we haven't seen in a while. I think it was like season 1 and then maybe referenced a little later.
Yeah, Sleepy Gary was a really fascinating character. In the episode Total Recall, where there's like the memory-altering parasites, he's like the only one who's never trying to convince anyone that they're the parasite. He's the only one who's just like, what if everything's just fine? What if we all just let this go? And he's got this really weird dynamic with Jerry, this really interesting relationship that he sort of concocts, but also seems genuinely affected by, and that really struck me. So when Oni reached out to ask if I wanted to do like a 30-page side character story, I sort of really quickly leapt to Sleepy Gary because it seemed like there was a lot of untapped stuff going on in that episode, and I thought it would be really worth it to dive in.
Yeah, I think that's the fun thing about being able to do the comic, because the cartoon, maybe down the road at some point someone will be like, we should do a Sleepy Gary episode. We should bring back Sleepy Gary. And like it'll go through revision and it'll just never happen. But with the comics, it could be like, well, what about that guy? What about those people? What happened at that time? Like, you're able to do it because it is a one-off.
Yeah, that's really what makes it a special and sort of a fun experience. Is Rick and Morty is such a weirdly involved show, and there's so much that's untapped. There's so much that they just glance off of. Like, there's a special about Crumbopoulos Michael, who's a one-off joke character. He shows up and gets killed, and there's so much implied history. And the opportunity to like mine and explore those character interactions and those implied histories and the weird dynamics offers a lot of really interesting emotional territory within the sort of offbeat high concept universe that Rick and Morty presents. It's really an exciting opportunity and a genuinely fulfilling sort of creative thing.
And because because it's just like a one-off, like either it's like a joke character like that, or if it's just, well, this is the episode where this character exists and you go off. There's so much room to breathe within it, within a world that everyone already agrees they're interested in. So like for folks that love Rick and Morty, they get more Rick and Morty, but they also get not just like, oh, it's the TV show, but in comic form. Instead, they get to be like explore all the other parts of the universe that are like, even it's such a, like you said, it's such a rich universe that there's all these little pockets of awesome.
And not only is it a rich universe, it's an infinitely rich universe. Like Teenie Howard did a story, earlier this year or last year, I'm not sure. I guess it would have been last year, about Summer discovering that there's a version of her in one of the infinite multiverses that is happy and is in a relationship with a girl, and she sort of has to like cope with this sort of emotional thing as someone who's not attracted to girls. Like, maybe that's what I need to be. Maybe that's what will make me happy. And so really taking advantage of like the infinite scope of Rick and Morty is what am I trying to say? I guess sort of the infinite scope of it just affords so much potential. That means you can kind of do anything.
I mean, and I think that's what we've seen is the nice thing about Oni having the licenses. They have access to so many great writers and artists that you can look at the variant for Sleepy Gary, the foil one, and you're like, well, that's just Tess Stone's style with Rick and Morty, and it totally works, but it wouldn't be what you, like the angular lines wouldn't be what you thought of. I don't know. That's very exciting to me. And now I'm going to seamlessly transition by talking about another exciting thing. We're going to talk about what's coming out soon, sometime in 2019. Let's talk about Morning in America. And I'll hold this and you can...
Okay.
Oh, right there. Why don't you give me the pitch for Morning in America?
Oh, I don't have a well-rehearsed pitch for it, so I'm just going to stumble through it. Morning in America is basically the story of a small town in Ohio that in 1983, after a new factory opens in this like failing factory town, because like how in the 70s like manufacturing in the Midwest was collapsing, so it's like a Rust Belt town that has been sort of mysteriously rescued by this mysterious factory that nobody really knows what they do, and just injecting all this money into the town, and also a bunch of kids are disappearing. And there's this the story centers on this gang of like no account like teen girl like delinquents who all have like police records, and because they deal with the police so often, one of them kind of overhears a conversation where they find out that the police aren't investigating the disappearances, that they're not looking into anything, and they decide that they have to do it because no one else is gonna. And so it's kind of like it's like a 80s nostalgia queer horror story with like sort of a Goonies It kind of vibe.
I mean, you just said 80s nostalgia queer horror story, and so like I was already on board, and now even more on board. Like you just hit all the nails. I love a good anti-hero story. Like they're delinquents, obviously they run into trouble, but there's just something very fun about like when shit goes wrong and when shit is bad, you can always lean on the like above the law vigilante, like cool people to like get the job done. Like when the cops aren't going to investigate, well, who do you turn to? Well, the delinquents in town. They're going to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what happens. Is there's a without spoiling too much of the first issue, there's this like sort of waster kid who sort of arranges a meeting with with the main character, ostensibly to just buy some black market cigarettes off of her, but specifically because he's like his brother or sister, I can't remember which one, had been was one of the disappearances, and he was like, you're the only ones, you guys do anything you want, you guys are the only ones who can do this. And that's what sort of sets him on this path, is when someone specifically reaches out and says, the fact that you guys are just ignore all the authorities is exactly what makes you the sort of people who can look into this.
Well, that's awesome. So look out for Morning in America, published by Oni. It'll be available sometime next year, and of course we'll be promoting that as well. Megs, thanks so much for joining me today here in New York Comic Con. We're going to have more videos, more interviews, more previews all weekend long, and we'll see you soon.